Dusty, have you ever gone on a hunting trip?
Well, yeah.
You pack all your stuff. Let's say you're driving to New Hampshire. Let's say I'm driving to Ohio, and you're hunting for 4, 5, 6 days. What's the biggest challenge you usually have?
You're going to stop multiple times to get gas, and I worry about odor the whole way.
It's always in the back of your head. After talking to our friend Tim Gauthier, we realized that there's a better solution that is portable. And that solution is called the ScentLock Enforcer. This nifty little device, about the size of an iPhone, it produces ozone. Ozone is this naturally occurring O3 molecule that actually naturally removes odors, kills bacteria, binds to all kinds of odor particles in the air, and basically makes you scent-free instead of like a scent cover-up. Does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure.
You can put this in your tote. It operates off of a USB and has an 8-hour battery life.
It's the personal ozone generator.
It is the personal ozone generator. If you want to check it out, go to ScentLockEnforcer.com. That's ScentLock Enforcer.com. Big Buck Registry's Deer Hunting Podcast, powered by ScentLock Enforcer, episode number 172. Bob Dumong. The nuances of learning game management and a free fall tree stand nightmare. Please support our sponsors as they make this show possible. Today's show is sponsored by ScentLock Enforcer, the Euro Hanger, and Morse's Sporting Goods. Big Buck Registry is a virtual museum of hunting stories. We preserve a piece of Americana by interviewing and recording hunters about their hunts and experiences from across the country. And who knows, maybe we'll learn a thing or two along the way that'll help us take our hunt to the next level.
Hey guys, this is Dan Bates with Tuned In Archery, the tineman and inventor of the Hang On Helper. You're listening to my favorite show. It's about to be yours, Big Buck Registry Deer Hunting Podcast.
This is Neil Pendleton of Southern New Hampshire, and I killed the 1490 buck. That's 1,490 days of hunting a 192-inch, 22-point, 10.5-year-old buck. You can too if you listen to the Big Buck Registry's Deer Hunting Podcast.
This is Sam Ubel from Whitetail Adrenaline, and I'm pressing play on one of my favorite podcasts, Big Buck Registry Deer Hunting Podcast.
Welcome to another episode of the Big Buck Registry's Deer Hunting Podcast. You know, I am once again absolutely thrilled inside that you push that play button right there on that audio device that you're listening to me talk to you on right now. And I know that there's another guy that's probably just as psyched as I am that you push play. And that's Dusty Phillips, my co-host and good friend from Ohio. How are you, my friend?
Oh, what's happening?
There's a buzz in the woods.
Oh, yeah, it's a little bit of the rut buzz, maybe?
Something's going on, man. I've seen 3 big bucks go down by New Hampshire deer hunters. Good New Hampshire deer hunters. Friends of ours, friends of this show, have all tapped out in the last 3 days.
That's a great thing when you can punch that buck tag, that's for sure. Especially this early of the year. It's going to get cold. Man, I'm not dreading it, but I don't look forward to January hunts, that's for sure.
I don't like January in general. There are 2 months of the year I don't like. January and July. And it's like too hot, too humid, or too cold, too dry. Everything else in between I enjoy completely.
For sure. Yeah, I agree to that.
This week we have a pretty interesting guest. And it's probably nobody you have heard of in the hunting industry. And that's okay, because I think he's probably one of the most interesting guests we'll have on this show. And it's because of his personality. He's a good friend of mine. He is a longtime deer hunting friend of mine. In fact, it was deer hunting that brought our guest today and me together initially. And then it formed a real strong friendship over the years. And I'm talking about my friend Bob Dumong, who is in North Carolina now. And he used to live in New Hampshire, moved down there quite a few years ago. I visited him over the years and hunted North Carolina. I've hunted hogs down in South Carolina with him. I've recently hunted Maryland with him. And he's just a good all-around guy. And, you know, we had been asked by a good contingent of the Big Buck Registry fan club about, we'd love to hear a show about somebody that fell out of a tree stand. And I think, Dusty, you asked me this question, well, who do you know? And I said, I know exactly the guy.
Yeah, I said, would it be a great podcast, talk to somebody that's had a tree stand accident? And sure enough, like 30 seconds later, he said, I got the guy.
Yeah, it was, and thank God he didn't get fatally hurt on that fall, but it was a doozy. It was a doozy, and I was actually had a hunt trip planned to go see him, and I canceled it because he ended up falling out of the tree stand, and knowing Bob, because he gets itchy to go back out in the woods, he would do everything he could to make sure that I had the right hunting places, and he would make sure I was all set. So, but I wanted him to get better, so I didn't go because I knew for sure that we would be out hunting and he'd be doing things he shouldn't be doing while I was down there. So I actually canceled that trip. He's all better now, but we get to hear how it all unfolded and what it is actually like to fall out of a tree stand and the types of things that he has to deal with now because of it. It's quite, it's one of the biggest fears I have is actually falling out of a tree stand. Yet I'm not afraid when I'm up there, but I just don't ever want to fall. And it's weird.
Yeah, I know what you mean. It's something that nobody wants to go through, Jay.
Nobody wants to do it. So that's why, and I think this is why we're doing the show, is to encourage you to be safe out there, encourage the use of the lifelines, encourage the tree stand harnesses. So if anything, we just want you to be able to hunt again next year because we want you to be able to take that big buck and be proud of it and not have to call a lifeline to get somebody to pull you out of the woods. That's what we're trying to prevent here. But in addition to all that, Bob's an excellent deer hunter. He's fearless. He's killed a lot of big deer, and he's learned a lot about game management. Moving to North Carolina, he's hooked up with some farmers in the area who have basically put him on the task of learning how to manage game and specifically deer for the farms around there that produce all kinds of products commercially for larger corporations, food corporations. So we get to hear about his whole adventure on that and hear the story about the tree stand fall and our standard 10 rapid fire questions. And he tells one heck of a good deer story, which is related to his fall. Stay tuned for that. But before we get there, let's turn to Jim Keller with the deer news.
The deer news this week is sponsored by the Euro Hanger. You don't have to spend big bucks to hang your big buck. Get yourself a Euro Hanger. Facebook.com/Eurohanger, EUROHANGER.
For the Big Buck Registry, this is Jim Keller with the Deer News. Deer hunters and DNR to watch for CWD. This story was found on the Channel 6 WLNS.com website. The start of the firearm deer season is fast approaching in Michigan, and officials are reminding hunters in 5 counties that they need to have their deer tested for chronic wasting disease. Michigan Department of Natural Resources officials say that the hunters in Ingham, Eaton, Clinton, Ionia, and Shiawassee counties need to bring their kills to one of 5 DNR check areas in the 5-county area. Chronic wasting disease is a fatal contagious disease that can spread quickly and infect large populations of deer. CWD has been found in 8 free-ranging white-tailed deer since May of 2015. DNR wildlife specialists say the 8 infected deer were found in more than 5,900 deer that were tested. That's somewhat encouraging. That gives us reason to continue our aggressive approach, DNR Wildlife Health Section Supervisor Kelly Straka said. We're trying to find and remove all the CWD-positive animals on the landscape. Baiting and feeding deer is not allowed in the 5-county CWD management area, and deer hunters in the area are required to have any deer harvested tested for the disease. It's also important to remember that CWD has never been linked to humans, pets, or domestic livestock. In addition to deer, the disease has been found in elk and moose in the United States and Canada. The best times for prescribed burn habitat management. This article was featured on the deeranddeerhunting.com website and was written by Jeremy Flynn. There are 2 main times of the year when you can successfully conduct a prescribed burn, during the dormant and growing seasons. Dormant season burns are often conducted during late winter when plants, trees, and shrubs are not actively sending nutrients for new growth. Conversely, spring and summer burns can be conducted to kill more above-ground vegetation. Each provides benefits for deer management. When burning in the late winter, much of the resources are contained in the roots below ground. Old growth is burned off along with leaf litter, and as spring arrives, so too does a new wave of highly nutritious deer food. This dormant season burn effectively top kills the woody browse while the living root system continues to thrive. Fire during the growing season still burns off leaf litter and sets back succession, but because some plants and shrubs are actively growing, this method will often kill hardwoods. It is commonly used when undesirable hardwoods are still relatively young and have taken over an area. Before you burn, determine the problem you are trying to fix and the goal you have set for the habitat. Prescribed burns are invaluable for regenerating habitat, but extreme caution must be exercised to make sure the fire stays contained. Arby's venison steak sandwich sells out in hours. This story was originally posted on the OutdoorHub.com website and was written by Keenan Crow. Apparently, Arby's has hit a home run with its new venison steak sandwiches. For a limited time, Arby's will feature a venison steak sandwich in more than a dozen restaurants across the country by the end of November. The restaurants rolled out the new sandwich November 1st in Nashville, Tennessee, and it was a huge success. According to the Tennessean, the first store sold out of the new sandwich on the very first day of the new promotion, selling 250 of them in just hours. Another store sold over 100 sandwiches in just over 1 hour. We struck a nerve in a good way with hunters, said Luke Derone of Arby's. Some people drove from an hour away to try it. The new sandwich, packed with 100% deer meat, steak, crunchy onions, and drizzled with a sweet berry sauce on a toasted roll, is part of the restaurant's new It's Meat Season campaign. Because of USDA regulations, restaurants can't sell wild game, so as an alternative, Arby's new venison sandwich comes from free-range, farm-raised red deer in New Zealand. Hunter killed from Treestand fall. Unfortunately, we have another case that should remind hunters everywhere to always wear a safety harness when hunting from a tree stand. According to Up North Live and the Mason County, Michigan Sheriff's Office, deputies responded to a report of a 56-year-old man who is believed to have fallen from his tree stand while bow hunting Saturday evening. Deputies said Robert Jankowski was found by some family members after not returning to camp following an afternoon hunt. Jankowski had not been wearing a safety harness and apparently fell from his tree stand. He was pronounced dead at the scene. This is another sad reminder that safety should always be a hunter's number one concern. Always wear a safety harness and don't let yourself assume everything will be all right. Be sure to get yourself one of the many safety harnesses that are available on the market today, such as a Hunter Safety Line system. If you already have one of these great harnesses, keep nagging your buddy who doesn't have one to get himself one. You could save his life. That concludes this week's edition of the Big Buck Registry's Deer News. For links to our stories featured this week, including opening dates for the Arby's venison sandwiches in your areas, please check our show notes at bigbuckregistry.com. If you have ideas for future topics or have questions about any of these topics, please email me at jim@bigbuckregistry.com. For the Big Buck Registry, this is Jim Keller with the Deer News.
Thanks to Jim Keller for the Deer News. Without further ado, here's Bob Dumong.
Bob Dumong, welcome to the Big Buck Registry's Deer Hunting Podcast. What's happening, my friend?
Hey, man, thanks a lot for having me. It's an honor to be on this show.
It's, we talked about doing this a while ago, and, we've known each other for a very long time. And there was a time when we'd hunt pretty much every other day in New Hampshire, as I recall, and every weekend for sure during deer season. And then you up and moved to North Carolina on me, which is fine because you've invited me down. But I miss hunting with you around here, brother. It's only appropriate to have you on the show so we can talk to one of my best friends of all time.
Well, I appreciate that, man. I'll tell you, I moved down here about 12 years ago, basically to get a little bit more of not a seasonal job. Being in the boating industry, obviously in New Hampshire, we had, as we would say, 100 days of summer and the rest winter. And
right.
Here we come to North Carolina because I didn't want to lose some of the seasons that we have. I still enjoyed a little bit of cold weather, but had a much longer boating season down here. And moved down here, and I've been in the same location, same house for almost 12 years now, and very much enjoy it. It's significantly different as in hunting styles and techniques down here than what we grew up learning. And the deer population is quite different down here, as in you see a lot more deer than you do there, a lot more agricultural fields versus all the woods that we had back there. So it's been a great transition for me down here for sure.
Well, it's opened up. And I have to be honest, your move, I think, was kind of a predecessor to the beginning of the whole show, the whole podcast, because it in essence opened up a communication between me and you of sharing pictures. You'd send pictures off trail cams or deer that you had shot or that your buddies had shot at some of the deer camps that you had belonged to when you first moved down there. And that really was the beginning of what is now known as the Big Buck Registry, where we have the Facebook page. And that, in essence, taking all those pictures that we share with our friends across the country, you being the one of the big sharers that that contribute on our phones at that time, now turned into the Facebook page and the podcast and so on and so on. So I have a lot to the show owes a lot to you, actually, because of your moving away. Actually,
I'm honored for that.
Isn't that funny?
Yeah, that is very interesting.
Yep.
That's awesome.
So tell us about yourself, Bob. I mean, you and I have known each other for a long time, as I had mentioned. But for the listeners, tell us a little bit more about yourself. Where are you from? Where did you start out, and how'd you get into deer hunting?
I'm 45. Married, got a daughter and a son and a stepdaughter and two stepdaughters, actually. Spent most of my life up in New Hampshire, even though I wasn't born there. I still call New Hampshire my hometown. I grew up with a group of people that when I was a child, that family was very outdoor oriented, and starting at an early age around 9, started learning how to trap and started learning how to deer hunt and their ways of deer hunting. And it really grew into quite a passion of mine, and their ways of deer hunting, and just kind of led me on. And this passion has just grown tremendously. Job related wise, I hated to leave New Hampshire as much as I enjoyed it, but to pursue the career that I was schooled in, which I graduated a marine boat repair school down in Daytona, Florida in 1992, and worked up on Lake Centipede in New Hampshire for quite a number of years. And just the winters were becoming tougher and tougher, obviously, for the marine industry, and I had to make a change and spent a lot of time here in North Carolina in the racing circuit. So I traveled a lot down here, and I kind of fell in love with the state because you could go 3 hours one way and be in the mountains. You can go 3 hours the other way and be in the ocean, and flatlands in between, farmland. So it really had the best of everything. It still had plenty of outdoor activities when it came to deer hunting, turkey hunting, bear hunting, now hog hunting. So it really kind of intrigued me to move here. So I ended up moving down here in the year 2005, and been in the boat business pretty much most of the time. I had a little stint that I was out of it for a while during our Great Recession in 2008, when really wasn't sure what was going to go on in the world, and found out my true heart and passion had always been and still is in the boating industry. And that's why I decided it was time for me to go to business for myself and opened up Buckhorn Boat Dock. And that has turned out to be quite a good business for me and for not only the local community. And I have boats that come in for repairs from 5-6 hours away. So,
nice.
I very much enjoy it.
That's cool, man. So tell me about your father. I mean, we've talked a lot about your dad, but I think he's an interesting guy, and he owes a lot, or we owe a lot to the outdoor industry, specifically in fishing, right? I mean, let's talk about your dad a little bit. Tell me about your dad.
I'm excited that you brought him up. My father, I was born in Illinois, and my father, and literally everybody with my same last name, is always been very big into fishing. And in 1971, the year I was born, my father founded with my uncle something called Salmon Unlimited. And Salmon Unlimited, and what their organization they were trying to do, is in Lake Michigan had no salmon population in the lake. So my father, with the assistance of Mayor Daley at the time in Chicago, created this organization to raise money to transport 10,000 fingerling salmon, Chinook salmon at that, from Alaska to Waukegan, Illinois, and try to produce the population of Chinook salmon for sport fishing in Lake Michigan. At the time, it was actually held a world record for transporting the largest small fish population. It's kind of an odd world record, but there's even crazier ones in the book.
Right.
Transporting these salmon. Well, he was instrumental in creating the fisheries in the state, and he'd always been a diehard fisherman. And through the years, my father really promoted hard Salmon Unlimited, which turned out to be quite a big organization. It's real strong in the Great Lakes area, obviously where the salmon population is strong. And through his years of fishing, he got in real close with Alan Ron Linder from the Inn Fisherman magazine and also Lindy Little Joe. Well, my father, with his passion, decided he started in designing and building fishing lures for salmon, became very successful at that, and actually designed a Great Lakes trolling rod for Zebco. And it was his signature series, Great Lake Trolling Rod. Him, Al Linder, Ron Linder, Tom Mann, Gary Roach, Randy Emerald, bunch of your top mid-'80s style fishermen, because this was back in the 80s.
Right.
And he did very well with that. And then in the early 90s, he got a little tired of catching the same freshwater species, and he moved up to Florida and still pursued more on a recreational aspect of fishing things. But he went to his grave dying, living, sleeping, breathing, fishing. So I've got to give a lot of my fishing ability, not that I'm a great fisherman, but I got to give a little of my fishing ability to him. And he really was instrumental in pushing me into the marine world, because I was at the time in New Hampshire working for an automotive dealership and just didn't have a passion for cars. I just, it was a necessity. It wasn't a want.
Right.
And I kind of call it the pain versus pleasure. It pains people to have their cars fixed because it's a necessity. People enjoy to spend money on their boat because it's a want, and it's their hobby. It's their passion. So it's definitely a much more rewarding career that I followed.
Gotcha. All right. Very interesting. So would you say your dad had an influence on getting you out into the wild overall?
My father probably got me started in the wild. He wasn't very much of a hunter. He did a little bit of goose hunting and stuff like that. But really, the guys in New Hampshire, because when my parents divorced and my mom and I ended in New Hampshire, I really didn't have a great father figure up there. And the kids that I met in school became my best friends at the time, and their whole families were diehard, dedicated outdoorsmen. And I kind of, at the beginning, had no choice but to be into the hunting and trapping if I wanted to spend time with my friends, because that's, basically what we were told to do, to spend time with your friends. And I didn't realize it at the time is here's your shotgun, walk 4 miles through the woods this way with this compass. And that's all you got if you were lucky, because we had no cell phones.
Right.
And we'll be at the other end. Little did we know we were all the parents' little guinea pigs pushing the deer to them. So here we are marching through the woods with our old J.C. Higgins 20-gauge bolt-action shotguns. And that's where I was like, this is really fun. I'm out in the woods. There's nobody around. And wow, this bear could come out and eat me. And, and that's where my passion for the outdoor really started.
Gotcha.
And I've been very blessed with a lot of great friends and family to lead me along the way in New Hampshire. So that's really where my hunting aspect got started.
Tell me about your earliest hunting memory.
Oh, man. I think the earliest one was probably up in Littleton, New Hampshire, and I was hunting with some good friends of mine. Their family, they owned a camp up there, and it was a ritual every year. We would go to deer camp, and we did whatever we had to do. That's all we looked forward to as kids, is looking forward. And my buddy's dad, Bruce, said to me, he says, okay, boys, you walk this way, and you go, and you're going to meet me on the other side of the swamp, blah, 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 blah. I said, okay. So we were always told we had to spread out. We weren't supposed to see each other. So of course, in New Hampshire, you've got ridges and mountains, and it's very easy to get a little bit sidetracked. Well, I did exactly what I thought I was supposed to do. Next thing I know, I hear cars. And I was like, okay, cars. So I just kept walking and walking and walking. Finally, I'm standing on an interstate, and I have no idea, because I don't even have my driver's license. I have no idea where I'm at. Well, what do? I just start walking the interstate, carrying a shotgun, wearing an orange vest on the side of the road. And finally, this lady pulls and goes, where are you trying to go? And I said, I am trying to find such and such in Littleton. She goes, Littleton? She goes, you're about 10 miles from there. And I said, oh, boy. Needless to say, she got me close to back where I was supposed to be. I was 7 hours later than I was supposed to be there. And everybody, because, again, no cell phones, everybody was just standing around ready to just kill me. And I'm like, look, that's what you get. And there was a blessing to that, because guess what? Bob didn't have to do any more deer drives because they knew Bob was going to get lost.
Bob's going to get lost. You can't send Bob out there.
So they just took and they said, Bob, you're going to go sit on stand. Well, that's when I had to start learning how to shoot, because during a deer drive, I sounded like a herd of buffalo coming through the woods. As a kid, I didn't walk quiet. I didn't do anything. So I made plenty of noise. But now, and I never got to shoot because I never saw a deer. I'd jump them, but I never could pull the gun up.
Right.
So that's when I started to have to learn how to shoot, when I'd actually be on stand. That's when I had to learn how to shoot. So that's a whole nother story in itself.
Gotcha.
So,
that's a good story. All right. So that kind of began your whole endeavor here. So
I can so see how you was 10 miles from where you started. There's no doubt in my mind. I'd be right there beside Bob walking. Man, we walked a long way, Bob.
The way the crow flied, I probably was only 2 to 3 miles from where I was supposed to be.
Right.
But the way the road miles were, I was 10 miles. So, and that's all that lady knew. And I knew one thing: I was not going back in them woods. I was like, oh, it'll be even longer before I even get back. So,
So you take all your knowledge of New Hampshire. Do you miss deer hunting in New Hampshire these days? I mean, it's a little more mountainous hunting than anything that's down your way, or at least what I've experienced. I don't know if you've gotten out to some of the mountains in North Carolina, but do you miss it?
I'll tell you, I miss that style of hunting, because hunting down here, and it may be this way in other parts of the United States, and I can't speak for a lot of them. New Hampshire is very blessed to have the ability to be able to literally walk out your back door and hunt on almost anybody's property without permission. And when I say without permission, without a lot of restraint. When I moved to North Carolina, now not all of North Carolina, but specifically here in eastern North Carolina, and that's near the I-95 corridor, it's a lot of agricultural land. And down here, it is very, very open fields, very thick woods. So the two hunting styles are significantly different. For example, in New Hampshire, you can hunt on the ground with a high-powered rifle. Here in our county, in multiple surrounding counties, you got to be a minimum of 8 feet off the ground to shoot a high-powered rifle. That consists of any centerfire rifle, except for shotgun, muzzleloader, crossbow, and bow. You can actually hunt from the ground. But here, you can't go in this area more than 20 feet in the woods unless you got a machete. You're not going to see a deer here. You're not going to see a deer effectively in the areas that they're hiding in the areas. So, yes, I very much miss that style of hunting up there. What North Carolina has done to me is taught me patience. It's taught me to be able to say, okay, you got to sit here all day. You got to stay right here. In New Hampshire, when you would walk a little, sit a little while, walk a little more, sit a little while, cut a track, try to hunt that track. That's not like that here. So the two styles of hunting are significantly different. But yes, I do miss hunting New Hampshire, that style of hunting.
Gotcha. All right. What are some of the other differences that you had to what are some of the other surprises that you might have encountered when you went to North Carolina that you weren't expecting in the style of hunting that you were introduced to?
Well, when I first moved down here, I came down here fairly blind to knowing the rules and regulations down here, except I knew when deer season was going to start, and that was really kind of it. I really thought a lot of places were like New Hampshire. You just went out, went hunting.
Right.
That's what you did. In my very first episode of hunting down here, I decided to go hunt across the street from where I live, and I wasn't in the wood 30 minutes, and I had somebody yelling at me. And I'm like, yeah. He says, what are you doing? I says, I'm hunting. He goes, no, you're not. You need to leave. You don't have permission. So the next day when I went to work, I was explaining this to one of the other guys who was an avid hunter. He's like, you dumb fool. This is how it goes. I'm like, what are you talking about? He goes, oh, yeah. He says, every ounce of land around here is either leased by a hunting club or it's leased by a private individual. You just don't go hunting anywhere. You have to. So that's when I learned about hunting clubs.
Gotcha.
And basically, the hunting club, I had to join one to be able to hunt down here. And we had 3,000 acres. You pay a fee yearly. You supply some stands, and you had 3,000 acres to hunt on. That was your only place you could hunt. You couldn't say, I'm going to go hunt central North Carolina and just go hunting. You had to go find public land if you were going to hunt. And this is all on private land. I found out down here you were allowed to hunt deer with dogs, which that to me was like, what? You're allowed to do what? You're allowed to use dogs to hunt deer?
Right.
That was totally new to me because I was brought up like, don't ever let a dog chase a deer, bad, bad, bad.
Right.
And then I learned down here you're allowed to bait. Well, bait? What do you mean? When you bait deer where I come from, you get a ticket. Oh, no, you're allowed to bait here. So it's a totally different style of hunting. The techniques have to change now. Now you've got to adapt to this different style of hunting. Okay, how do we hunt down here? How are we going to hunt these deer down here? Well, it sounds simple. Yes, our deer population is fairly strong, and you can go out just about any day or night, and yes, you could harvest yourself a mature doe. You could harvest yourself a small buck. And that's what I kept seeing, and I kept listening to people and hearing them talk like, oh, yeah, I killed a buck today. He was a 4-pointer. I was like, well, hey, I know in New Hampshire, if I saw a 4-pointer, I probably would have shot it just based on the fact of you didn't see that many deer up there. I mean, we can all that is hunted up there can speak. You could go days and never see a deer. If you go days down here and don't see a deer of some sort, something's wrong.
Right.
It's almost impossible. So to adapt to this kind of hunting, when I first got here, yes, I was harvesting some of the small bucks. I guess I was taking my frustrations out of being in New Hampshire where I didn't see a lot of deer, and I was killing just about everything I could kill.
Yeah.
We have a very generous tag system down here. Basically, in my county or this part of the state, we're allowed 6 deer a year. Well, 6 deer on your first initial license, and that includes up to 4 bucks or 2 does.
Okay.
For $10, you can get tags for unlimited does. You basically can kill all the does you want here.
Okay.
And that's just a great thing.
It's that's a contrast to New Hampshire by a long shot. So, and I remember how excited you were when you got down there. Like your head was buzzing with new information and all these new rules and things that you could do that you couldn't do in New Hampshire. And I remember that you went all in. I mean, they joined the hunt club, helped them cut down the shooting lanes. And by shooting lanes, these aren't just little trim things. You're taking brush hogs and cutting out 16-foot passageways from one stand to the other, and some of the stands you could drive to and actually hunt out of the stand with your truck parked under the stand. You could see for 700, 800,000 yards in some directions.
Yeah, and that's true. And again, a lot of the hunting club that I belonged to, the land was primarily owned by a bunch of the paper timber companies, and so there was a lot of access roads, and because of the conditions of the woods, a lot of stands, and they build a lot of things here. We call them down here box stands. Some other places call them tower stands. There's a lot of those in a lot of these clubs. And the first time I got into one, I'm like, oh my God, this is hunting. You know, we're sitting in these leather office chairs, reclined back, and we're basically just staring down these lanes, waiting for the deer to come out. And after a year or two of that and working hard at the club, I started getting a little bored of it because I knew there was much larger deer. We saw deer. We had the camera pictures of the deer, but you didn't see the deers except during the rut. Well, that's a very short period, but a very long season here because our season begins with bow in September, mid-September, and our season goes for a couple weeks. Then our muzzleloader comes in the 1st of October. That goes for a couple weeks. Then it's rifle season right up until January 1st. So there was a lot of area of time that wasn't being focused on. And that's when I had to start getting out of that box stand and start learning these deer down here and start learning what they're doing. What are their patterns? What is, you know, I wasn't used to having agricultural fields where you could have soybeans in one and sweet potatoes in another and having all this and acorn crops somewheres in the woods. And it was quite a learning experience because I wanted to be that guy that could potentially harvest that nice buck before everyone else did, because when the rut came on, anything could happen. You know, anybody could be lucky. Anybody could be at the right place at the right time. I wanted to learn that deer. I wanted to understand that deer. I wanted to pattern it. I wanted to hunt it. And getting out of that stand, and it took me a little while to get comfortable with the situation to do that. And once I did, then I was like, okay, now I'm going to start hunting these deer. Now I'm going to learn these deer. And I've been very fortunate by doing that. And I've taken a lot of what I learned in New Hampshire and understanding deer trails and tracks. I knew more about deer tracking and trails and what deer did from New Hampshire. I knew deer patterns. I learned deer patterns and deer movement down here because I had to work those deer a lot harder here than I did up there.
Gotcha. So. I distinctly remember one of the trips that I made to North Carolina at the first hunt club you belonged to, and you had been down there for a little while when I actually arrived, and it was one evening, and you were aware of all the different hunting stands where most of the guys were hunting, where most of the pressure was, and you laid out a map, and you basically analyzed where you thought most of the bucks probably went because they'd been pressured for a certain amount of time. And you took your four-wheeler, and it was one of the swampiest parts of the whole property. Not real groomed, not well maintained. And you found like one tree in the middle of all this, 10-foot high, what is equivalent to vines just growing in and out of itself. And you managed to find a place. It was kind of hard to get to, even on foot. And we got the four-wheelers in there. And that night, you shot what probably ended up being one of the biggest bucks shot at camp all year. But it's because you analyzed the map and analyzed the pressure where you thought they were getting pressure, and went exactly where nobody had really hunted because it's hard to get to. And that's when you capitalize.
Yeah, and it's true. And one of the key things that struck me off on that, because at that point in time, I knew where the property lines and everything were, and I knew where the stands were. And not only was I learning, because when you take 3,000 acres and you've got a total of 35 members on that hunting club, you can have an upwards number of 10 to 20 people on an average on a weekend hunting. Well, when you've got approximately 50 stands, there's probably 30 that are usable. So listening to everybody talk at the camp, I kind of kept always one ear open. We had something called area that was called non-trophy land.
Right.
And the club had rules where you couldn't shoot a buck unless it had a certain measurement. And I would hear all these people talk, and I would watch their hunting strategy. Well, they would all hunt on what we called the trophy land. And what I found is that it was kind of a mind game, is when the word non-trophy was used, it almost made them believe that there was no trophy deer on that land. So by using that and being so few hunters and knowing the pressure that was being put on them on the trophy land, those deer were migrating over into this non-trophy land and just living large because there was no pressure. And that's when I said, you know what? I'm going to go where nobody goes, because the deer are going to be there. And I'd done just a small amount of scouting, not nearly as far back as I went that day, but I'd done some scouting, and I was like, look at this. This is your dream here. I haven't seen anything like this on the whole property. And I used some of the human words, things I heard, and some of the deer activity. And I was very blessed to harvest a nice deer out there.
Yep.
So,
it was a good call and the right call for that night. No doubt about it. So one of the things that we have been asked about, and we get in we get them by emails or Facebook messages, and Dusty can attest to this, is that one of the things that people really want to know about is falling out of a tree stand. Nobody really wants to do it because it hurts, or kills, and
yes,
it's one of those things that's it's one of my biggest fears. I still hunt from tree stands. I hunt safely out of tree stands, but there's always that thing in the back of your head that, what happens if I fall? And I thought of when Dusty asked me, who do you know that has fallen out of a tree stand? It was my good friend Bob.
I hate to be the guy you're all talking about, but it has definitely opened up my eye about safety. I have always been one of those fearless kind of guys that would climb 50 feet up in a tree to get a cat out and not even think twice. I was a firefighter back home. Fear has never been a part of my vocabulary.
Right.
Safety has been relatively okay. But I want to tell you about that, and I think a lot of the people listening to this show can probably relate. I'm not stupid. I was following the precautions, which I thought were correct. And I think it's going to be an eye-opener for a lot of people. And on September 30th of 2012, for the winter months of 2011, 12, 13, and 14, during the winter months, I was a hunting guide, and I guide for hogs and deer. And our property was a 1,000-acre block owned privately by gentlemen. And it was located about 3 miles the way a crow flies in the woods with one access road in and out. Well, the access road in and out was, by the grandfathered clause, was not allowed to be used for any kind of commercial hunting. Well, this land consists of primarily about 50% heavy swamps. It was in what we call the lowlands of Johnston County, North Carolina. And we used to carry our hunters in by boat. We'd have to travel 6.5 miles downriver to the side of the river, and we would tie up on the river and ride the ATV or the SUV. We had a vehicle down there that drove you into camp. Well, one of our boats lost a motor, coincidentally. So the weekend before it lost the motor. Well, I had 3 guys who now have all become very good friends that were in the Army Special Forces. Well, when the motor broke, they actually helped me take it off the back of the boat because we weren't getting back upriver. We put it in the vehicle. We got out, fixed the motor. Well, the following week, the weekend of my accident, I found my one and only friend that would go down with me on a Friday and help me get this motor back on a boat. Yep. And so I says, look, once we're done with this, we'll crossbow hunt tonight. I says, or bow hunt tonight. Tomorrow's opening day of muzzleloader. We'll hunt muzzleloader. He says, great. Never been to the property before. He's never seen it. So we got into the property. We handled the boat. We got it taken care of. And I said, okay, Mike, let me take you over here, and I'm going to drop you off. So I take him over out in the middle of this area. I drop him off. I ride the four-wheeler around, and I get to where I want to park. So I'm going up into a lock-on. This lock-on, we had 18 feet of ladder sticks, and we had 6 screw-in steps to finish the rest of the distance up. The lock-on was exactly 22 feet in the air, and it was overlooking a real nice oak grove, and we had quite a bit of activity in there, both deer and hogs. So I was looking forward to this. So I get to the base of the stand and have my harness on, my whole 9 yards. So I begin to tie my bow to my crossbow to my pole rope. I've got my backpack on, and I'm climbing up the ladder sticks. Well, the end of this ladder sticks stop, and then you go to screw-in steps. And you kind of hold on to the screw-in steps and step over onto the platform of the ladder stand, of the lock-on. Mm-hmm. So I get up to where I'm supposed to be. My right foot is on the very top of the ladder sticks. I put my left foot over on the platform of the lock-on, and all of a sudden I feel a pink. And I was like, what? And I look, and my ladder sticks start sliding out from my right foot. My top strap breaks. Well, in the meantime, the top strap breaks. Down I go. I fall 22 feet to the ground on my right leg. I shatter my right leg. So now, after I got the wind back in me, I kind of started breathing. It didn't knock me out. I landed on my leg first and on my back. And once I got the wind back into me, I look over, and previously the week before, we were cutting some of the brush out around the base of the tree. And I land right next to a small limb that we had chopped off with a machete that was like a point. I'm laying right next to it, and it's about 2 feet long. So 6 inches over, it would have harpooned me, and I wouldn't be here right now. Well, I knew instantly my leg was in bad shape from my knee down, because you hear people say that my foot was truly facing the other way. So I said, okay, I know something's bad. Well, I have knee-high rubber boots on. I can't get it off to see what I got. So I said, okay, let me get a hold of Mike. So first person I call is I get a hold of Mike. Well, Mike's already up in his tree stand. He has a very poor cell phone signal. He's got a very poor cell phone company for around this area. He can hardly hear me. So my first problem was I never showed him where or told him where I was going to be hunting. Secondly, he don't even know where he's at, let alone know where I'm at. And we have no game plan, no safety, no nothing. We have nothing. I had my safety harness on when I got up there, but I didn't even have a chance to put that strap on yet to hold me in the tree.
Right.
So the second, I says, Mike, you need to get down out of the stand. You need to walk back out to where I drop you off. Try to call me. He says, all right. I said, I'm hurt bad. So he gets down out of the stand. Meanwhile, I'm laying there, and I reach in my pocket because I need to chew at this time. So I reach in and grab my can of Copenhagen. My Copenhagen can blew apart in my pocket. So I'm picking the plastic out, and then I finally get a dip in. Then I call my wife. I says, honey, I'm hurt bad. I'm in the woods. I'll let you know. And she's, of course, freaking out. I says, I'll let you know as soon as I can get to camp. Well, camp is 3 miles from the nearest paved road in the woods, basically logging roads, and I'm another mile from that. So Mike gets to a spot, and he tries to call me. He can't hear me. So I was like, I finally could get enough words to him, say, climb up this stand. So he climbs up this next stand, get another phone call to him. Finally, I can walk him to the four-wheeler. I says, and he calls me the four-wheeler. It's better reception. I says, I'm in here another 100 yards. He comes into me. He goes, man, you're hurt. So I said, yeah. So he cuts me a stick, and we make a splint, and we tie my leg to this splint. Now, the whole time, I think my foot is filling with blood in my boot because I've lost all feeling in it. So I think my foot's just bleeding away under there. Yep. That's the first problem, is he gets to me, we get this taken care of. So basically, he gets the four-wheeler to me. I climb back on the back of the four-wheeler and lay there like a dead deer. He drives me a mile to camp. Now I've got to get a hold of EMS. Now I got to figure out how EMS is going to get in here, because not only is there one lock gate to get in there, there's 3 lock gates. Not only is there one road, there's 3 different branches of that road to get in here. So it would have been trying to find a needle in a haystack to even find me. So we get back to camp, and I call EMS. I let them know that I've got an issue, stage at such and such road. I will have somebody there that unlock the gate and lead you in. Well, there's only 3 people that had a key, and there was one only close enough, and he was 35 minutes away to get to the gate to even show these people how to even get into where I'm at.
Wow.
So eventually he gets them in. They can't bring an ambulance in, so they bring a gator in. The lady comes in, and they're getting ready to set up a landing zone for the helicopter. I was like, look, I ain't going out in no helicopter. Let me climb the back of this gator and ride me out to the ambulance. And I didn't think I had any other injuries. I really didn't feel I was sore everywhere, but I didn't think I had that pain. It was pretty rugged. So they get me to out to the ambulance. My wife, who was an RN, worked at a hospital, says, I want to go to this hospital, Wilson Medical Center. And They're like, how far did you fall? I told them, she goes, you're trauma. You're going instantly to trauma center. Well, I go to Wake Med and to get the evaluation, do the x-ray, and they find that my tibia and my ankle is shattered. And so to make a long story short, I went through 11 days in the hospital. I had 5 different surgeries. The last surgery, basically, he's like, you coming out with or without a leg. We don't know. And I said, well, do the best you can. I had compartment syndrome, which now has caused me not to have any feeling from basically my calf down to my toes. So it was a very traumatic experience. And I don't think I did anything different than anybody would do. I had my safety harness on. I had my strap to lock me in. I had my pole rope. I had everything I was supposed to do. And spending those 11 days in the hospital, I sat there and I said, what could have I done different? What could I have done different? You know, I never knew about these things. And as much as I thought I stayed into the hunting scene and kept up on things, I never knew there was something called a lifeline.
Yep.
And to this day, the lifeline on any lock-on stand we have, I don't care if the stand goes up for a day, it has a lifeline on it. And that is a key factor. If I had that lifeline, we wouldn't be talking about this story.
Right.
That fall affected me for a long period. It took me almost 7 months to learn how to walk again and have strength. To this day, I can't run. I'm never going to be able to run. I got 2 titanium plates, 18 screws holding my ankle and my tibia together from my knee down. So it's been definitely a major safety lesson for me about that. And it wasn't just the lifeline. It was the communication. You know, if I was out there by myself, and I don't know how many hundreds of times I've hunted all by myself and told nobody.
Right.
You know, before you go to the house, and you hear all these people talk about it, and and I don't know how many times people tell me, you always have a plan, always have a plan. Look, there's always a plan. I send text to somebody, hey, who knows all my stands? I got one friend here that does. I'll be hunting such and such. Yep. There's an emergency. They know they call him. They'll find me. He'll know right where I'm at. He'll take them right to that stand.
Yep. Have
that plan before you go hunting. Make sure your stuff's safe. And when we went back after a while to look to see what really happened, because we still at that point didn't know. And when Phil went back and checked it out, he goes, Bob, that top strap broke. And the ladder sticks that we're climbing up on, they're supplied from the factory with a nylon strap. And they're like anything else. Those sticks, they probably had been up 5 or 6 years. We never checked the strap. And now every time we put a ladder stick up, we don't use just the straps. We use ratchet straps. And we make sure that those things are just as good as can be. Get that safety plan. Make sure your equipment's ready. Always have somebody know where you're at, man. I was fortunate to have the capability and have cell phone reception. If I didn't have any reception, God, I could still be there right now. Who knows?
Right.
In cutting brush, I almost got harpooned by this stick. We don't cut brush 2 feet tall anymore. We cut brush to the bottom. If we got to notch a little brush, it gets cut to the bottom now.
Gotcha.
Yep.
Dude, now that's a story. Wow. Holy smokes.
It makes you stop and think about all the times that you've been out and somebody really didn't know where you was at.
Right.
You got that right.
God, man, just gives me the willies thinking about it. I'm glad that, I don't know. It's thank God you're here. Thank God you're still with us. But man, what a shocking experience that is. And for any deer hunter listening to this, they got to be going like, oh my God, that's crazy. Wow.
Yeah. And I'll tell you, if people hear the story, but if they go to my Facebook page and look at the pictures that are posted from the accident, it will make you think again twice, skin grafts and, that really seals the deal. Right. You can hear this, you can verbally imagine it, you hear it, then you imagine it, and you're sitting there going, oh, yeah, his leg, his face. Then you see the physical wounds. Then you're sitting there going, wow, okay.
Right.
That's what it would happen, huh? So,
Thanks. So, do you find yourself hesitant these days climbing in and out of tree stands? Is it mentally exhausting to try to do that, or is it just like you still have the no fear kind of thing?
Honestly, I have the no fear kind of thing, but I have respect. I used to have no respect, no fear. Now I have the no fear with a tremendous amount of respect.
Okay,
and that I think twice about certain things now.
Yeah.
Before, if I would climb up a stand if I've been invited to hunt with somebody, which could happen, and he said, yeah, go to this stand, and I start climbing up, and it's kind of sketchy, dude, I'll sit on the ground. I ain't going through this again. Yeah. So versus before, I'd be like, yeah, it's not falling off. It probably will in a minute, but it's not now. Just keep going.
Right.
Now I have enough respect to know, okay, my mind knows that this hurts when you fall.
Right.
So.
Okay. Gotcha. So there is a bit of mental, some mental imagery that still comes back to you that keeps you from, at least you're testing more than you ever were.
And it's so true. And what really opened my ears too is I have been quite surprised how many hunting accidents happen around here. We had a friend of mine and I had a good older gentleman that is an avid hunter, uses a climber stand, and lo and behold, unfortunately, he was coming down out of his climber stand last year, and his bottom fell out from underneath him, and he fell right through. And unfortunately, his situation wasn't as good as mine. He is alive, but he ended up breaking his neck. He laid there for 7 hours. Nobody could get a hold of him, and they found him half dead. He spent a long time in intensive care. But that it's like, man, then I start hearing him. I was like, this stuff really does happen a lot more than I think. And again, he's one of those severely cautious hunters. But he did like I used to always do. I always used to use a climber without a safety harness. And if he had that safety harness on, that extra belt that comes free with the safety harness, he wouldn't been in ICU for the time he was.
Right. Right. Gotcha. Well, I think it's an important thing to highlight on the show and to really send home that how important those safety devices are, and how some of the simple yet extremely effective, like the Lifeline. It's a very simple device, just a rope with some specialized knots in it. But boy, it can make the difference between you not going home ever and getting to hunt again, even though there may be a mishap with the stand you're in. So huge point there.
It's one of them things too, that just hearing Bob's story and thinking about what you're doing, it's real selfish not to be safe out there, really. You're hunting, you're spending time away from your family already, then you could go do something that you truly love and have a great passion for, and have a mishap over, something as simple as a safety harness, and it could ruin your life. It could ruin your kid's life or whatever. You be blessed that you're hunting from the start, but respect it.
Correct.
Respect it and do the right things to make it safe while you're hunting.
Yep. Well, thanks for sharing that story with us, Bob. I didn't mean to pry, but I think it's an important lesson for everybody to have and to hear what it's like to actually experience that whole fall. And that's thanks for opening up on that.
Anytime.
So one of the things, and you had mentioned that you did some game management after moving to Carolina, after you've been there for a little while, and you're doing some hunting trips for different types of hunting, whether it be hog hunting, deer hunting. You've engaged in a game management type strategy, and I think it was like a natural progression after you got down there because of your deep interest for all this stuff. And when you saw that you had lots of deer that could be managed in areas that you were hunting, that you took it on, and you've learned a lot from that. And you and I had discussed some of the things you had learned when we were in Maryland hunting on the east coast there, and it was fascinating to just listen to what you had to say. So I was wondering if you could kind of get into some of the things that probably naturally developed as you were going through all these experiences with being able to see lots of deer. Like, for example, you told me that some of the land next to you was managed in a sense because a lot of I think it was the cabbages and the carrots that go to Kentucky Fried Chicken are grown nearby where you were, and that they were constantly monitoring deer movement in and out of those crops because they had a commercial use that needed to go somewhere. So go ahead.
Yeah. When I first got down here, obviously, we talked about me joining a hunting club. And what I found with belonging to a hunting club is that unless all members are on the same page, it's very difficult to keep a very managed for buck maturity quality buck, because that's how most of us, want to kill a mature quality deer mountable buck. And that's what we all want. But then again, we have our meat hunters. Well, we have something that fixes that down here, and that's our doe population.
Right.
And what we found is with this club, we had the non-trophy and trophy land. The non-trophy land, if you absolutely had to kill something with antlers that was just a little spike horn or a little four-pointer, and that's what's going to appease you, then you could go hunt over there. And so it was somewhat difficult for everybody to come on the same wavelength to manage deer. Now, they did a very good job for what they had to work with, as in people in the club. So when I got out of the club, and I did it just because of the political aspect of things, hunting started losing a little interest to me because there was a lot of political garbage that went on with you being able to hunt. And I didn't enjoy that, because hunting is supposed to be our time to get closer to God, to get closer to ourselves, the wild, whatever you want to call it. So when I left the hunting club, I was blessed that I have a very large farmer that is just a few doors down from my house that owns a tremendous amount of land around here. And he went through something just the opposite. He used to lease his land to some hunting clubs and stuff through the years. He got tired of the same political kind of crap that would go on, where one member would say to him, hey, I know you don't want any small deer being killed, but this guy's doing it. And so he had to deal with a lot of this stuff. So to stop that, he just basically shut everybody off.
Yep.
So his sons, who were friends of mine, were avid outdoorsmen, but they were also farmers. And as they graduated college and things went on, their hunting for deer really dropped tremendously, and they started doing more, which they always did, but it was easier for them to do a lot of the waterfowl stuff. So they concentrated more on that. So this land was kind of turned over to me. And when it was turned over to me, it was under the understanding with me and the farmer, I want you to manage my land. Nobody hunts on my land unless you say it's okay. I want you to manage the population of deer for crop destruction, the whole 9 yards. And he says, and if anybody asks to hunt, they're going to call you. And I'm like, wow, this is a huge blessing. What's it going to cost me? He goes, it's going to cost you nothing. You don't know. And that is, to have almost 1,500 acres to yourself is just amazing. You either have a very large checkbook or you got a huge family. And of course, here's this Yankee moving down south, and to have a nice gentleman turn this over to me. So it all started on the managing aspect is on when in 2008, there was that major, I think it was 8, there was a major scare for E. coli bacteria.
Yep.
And E. coli was being found in multiple different vegetables grown out in the field weren't, I guess, Dusty would probably know the exact name. I call it shelled vegetables, where you don't actually eat the outside. Unlike lettuce, romaine lettuce, cabbage, and stuff like that, where you actually eat the grown leafy product. The company that was purchasing a lot of this cabbage from a friend of mine used to have a policy. The policy was that if there was any deer feces in the fields when the auditors came through, they would quarantine a 10 by 10 area off. And that 10 by 10 area was non-harvestable, non-purchasable. Well, right in the middle of the peak growing season during this E. coli scare, everybody getting sick, they came back with a memo saying, we have changed our policy. The auditors are now, if there is deer tracks in the field, they will quarantine a 10 by 10 area off in that field, and they will not be purchased. Well, if you knew the deer population down here, you might as well take your whole entire crop, spray it down Roundup, and call it a day.
Right.
Because there's no such thing as not deer tracks, unless they showed due diligence. Due diligence was a double-stranded, two-fence wire electric fence system, a deer management program in play. So I kind of got thrown into that on the deer management aspect. He was handling the electric fence and stuff like that. Harvest time was coming up, so we basically had to get a deprivation permit. And as much as we hated to, it was his livelihood. We basically had to declare war on this new piece of property that he was growing on to get the deer out of there so that he didn't lose his livelihood. And once we did that and made that unfortunate large harvest of deer, none of the deer went to waste, thank God. We were able to turn them over to a lot of the labor camps around here where the migrant workers come in and work in the fields, and a lot of them took them. So a lot of deer didn't go to waste. Some did. I knew there was a better program. I knew there was a better way. I knew there was a better way than us have to do this once a year, just basically go in and shoot everything we see. There's got to be a better way. So that's when I really started focusing on, okay, what is the correct buck-to-doe ratio around here? You know, I don't care what anybody says. There's really no correct ratio that's the same here as it is in Ohio, as it is in Arkansas. It's so different because there's 10 to 1 here for does on an average. So I just took that information and I said, okay, I got to figure a better way. Well, coincidentally, one of the state of North Carolina's biologists with a master's in whitetail management became a customer of mine on boats.
Okay.
So we sat down and spoke a lot about different things. And, you know, and I was trying to ask him a lot of things. And I took a lot of his information and I applied it to what I've got today. And I've been very blessed to be able to have the property I have. One of the things being, you know, I'm like, what is the true ratio? And he couldn't even give a true word. He goes, here, you'll be lucky to have 4 to 1, 5 to 1, 5 does per buck if you're doing really well. I said, okay, well, that gives me something to shoot for. So that's when the purchase of trail cameras really started to take off. I always had 2, 3, 4 because I'd always use them to manage and chase down this one buck. Well, now I'm doing it to monitor fields, monitor deer. And there was one field that I'm sitting there, and I went during sweet potato season, and it looked like crop circles out there. And we set up couple trail cameras, and it was I had no idea there could be this many deer in a field. We went and sat in a stand one night and counted 43 deer. That is massive here. I mean, we do have a lot of deer, but 43 deer in one field at one night. And the majority of them were does. There was not even one deer that would have even been close to being something you wanted to hang on the wall. So we knew, talking to the farmer, this is an area that needed to be worked. So I invited some friends in that big venison eaters. And I said, guys, I can't eat all this deer, but we need to thin out some of these deer. So each of them would take a day here and there, and they would go, because you could harvest a couple deer a day here. They would harvest a couple deer, tag them, take them to processor, have them processed, or process them themselves. So the deer weren't going to waste. And that was a big thing with me, is that, you know, I'm not just going to go out and kill a bunch of deer just to kill a bunch of deer and get it out of the gene pool or slow this gene pool down. There's got to be a reason to get rid of them. There's got to be people out there that want them. And we're talking with the local Fish and Game. We started giving some to the local church banks and some of the food banks and, you know, and stuff of that nature. But this one area in particular really kind of struck me because one night when I sat there, I said, I'm going to kill 2 deer tonight because I need 2 big does for my freezer because I try to put 6 away a year. So I'm going to go kill 2 does. Well, victim of circumstance, I end up shooting a cow horn, as we call down here, cow horn, spike horn, however you want to look at it. Yep. Head antlers that are about 10 inches long, single on each side. I was just sick to my stomach. I'm like, man, I can't believe I just killed. But that is a big cow horn. I'm sitting there going, that's a big cow horn. I cannot believe that I just did this, blah, blah, blah. But boy, I thought it was just a big doe, because I did. It was about a 180-yard shot, which is nothing here. I mean, 180 yards is like nothing around here. So I take it to the processor, and, he's open till 9 at night. So you just load him up, take him over there, tell him what you want. Well, a lot of times the biologists were there, and the lady biologist comes over and says, do you mind if I pull the teeth out of your deer? And I was like, no, not at all. I says, go ahead. I said, man, I can't believe I killed this spike. And, I'm trying to soothe my tears, because I'm like, I just killed this cow horn. There's a million does out there, and I killed the cow horn. What's my luck? And she came back to me. She goes, that little deer you killed, you said was a little deer, that little cow horn? I said, yeah. She goes, that deer was 3.5 years old. And I said, what? I said, what was his problem? She goes, you must be hunting in a place where the inbreeding is very strong. And I said, well, you know what? I think you're right. She goes, that deer, that doe over there? I said, yeah. She goes, that doe is 6 years old. And that's a 6-year-old doe? Well, I've killed 4-year-old does that have been another half as big as her.
Right.
And he said, this area you're hunting is overpopulated. And that's what I needed to hear. I was like, you're right. Well, through the years, the only took a couple years, we finally got that area over there now. We're growing nice bucks. We're getting these things down. So, okay, now we're starting to grow these nice bucks. How do we keep these bucks? How do we keep more bucks around here? Well, that conversation I had with the biologist really helped me out a lot. And one of the things he told me, and it's really stuck strong with myself and anybody that hunts with me, I'm fairly strict about what people kills. He's like, you want to keep a buck on your property? I said, yep. Yeah, he says, if that buck comes out with its mother within the first 18 months of its life, he says, if he's still hanging around with his mom and it's a buck, shoot the mother doe. Make sure she's a mature doe, shoot her. But it has to be within his first 18 months of life. And I says, what do you mean? She says, because that's all that deer knows. That's all that buck knows. It knows what its mom has taught him, and it knows only that property. He's too scared to leave. Mother Nature's way of getting them out of the area to control interbreeding is by kicking them out within their first year and a half. And I said, really? He goes, yes. So we started laying this into there. What we started noticing is with our more mature does, after about 3.5 years old, they would start producing twins. 90% of the time, the twins were twin does. So, and from that point further in their life, they just kept reproducing does. So it was the young does that were producing the bucks. So we would start harvesting the 3.5 and above does, or the does that were non-breedable. And how I consider a non-breedable does, we call it the old horse head, an older doe with a big old horse head and with no little ones with her. If in most all does around here get bred, if there's no little ones with her and she looks like an older, dark-skinned, big horse head doe, she's harvested. She's out of that. And I'll tell you, that whole, just those two little things, and sometimes it's hard to do if you don't have some land that has some acreage. And now when I tell you I have 1,500 acres, this isn't one block that's 1,500 acres. I got some 80-acre blocks. I got some 200-acre blocks. I got some 50-acre blocks. And this can work in most situations, except where you got heavy pressure around that area. I have one block that's around 400 acres that is the honey hole. I mean, we have 5 to 6 bucks for every doe in the pictures. Oh, wow. And I can tell you some of these bucks now that are 6 and 8 pointers, I can tell you what they look like when their nubs just busted their head because they never left, And I have one in particular out there that within the next year, by next year, he could be a harvestable buck. He's getting smart now if somebody can hunt him, but he has a very distinctive white spot on his side. He's had it ever since he lost his spots. We see him every year. Every year he's back here. And I did exactly that. The very first year I learned this is the very first year I did. I shot his mom. I hate to say it on TV. I shot his mom. Gotcha. And never left. So, and he's never left. And in that management and with our mineral supplements, we don't go buy a lot of fancy mineral supplements. We do a lot of typical stuff. Our agricultural fields, our soils don't have the growth in it that it needs to, so we supplement them with the minerals. They get other nutrients from the soybeans and the sweet potatoes. You can never prevent them from getting some of them, but they get a lot of nutrients, and it's really worked out very well for us, to be able to do that. There's some pieces we just can't control. We have some surrounding hunters that apparently love antler stew. I don't know why. They love something called antler stew because they'll shoot a little spike horn over the 20 does standing next to it. I don't understand it,
right.
But we have some areas that I work hard at it, but I'm producing them some nice deer, I think.
Wow. That's fascinating. And I'm sure there's other things that you learn. We probably don't have enough time to get into all of it, or there's probably some stuff that you haven't thought about for right now. But that's absolutely fascinating, the stuff that you've learned since you moved there and was basically thrown into the mix to just manage a piece of property, and what you've learned from the biologist. Sounds like it's working, and I think that's another lesson we can take home today is anybody listening that wants to manage some kind of area, some of the tips that you just shared, whether it be shooting the mother doe, the 3.5-year-olds, or taking out old horse heads. I think it's just one of those little lessons that might change your property around and increase a buck to doe ratio into something that's more of what you're looking for.
And it's worked for me. It may not work for everybody. There could be people saying, "Oh, that there's no way that would work here." You just don't know unless you try. Right. And if you have the capability of managing something, then give it a shot. What do you got to lose?
Right.
And that's what we did. We went with what we learned. I tried what we learned. Some things have worked, something hasn't, but more things that I've learned have worked than haven't.
Gotcha. All right, so now you've got all this great knowledge. You've studied your deer populations ad nauseum since you've arrived there several years ago from New Hampshire. The landscape's completely different. And what I want to get into is now you're managing property for other people and learning to shoot to save crops, basically, in a lot of ways. But you must have developed your own hunting styles and techniques and strategies for yourself. That is, we all have our own bags of tricks, so to speak, when we go into the woods. I want to kind of get into yours and find out what you're doing to be successful in North Carolina as a hunter, specifically when you're trying to hunt down not necessarily the does, because the does are part of the management scheme, but what are you doing to hunt the bucks when you know there's a good buck in the area? And I'm going to turn the mic over to Dusty so that we can go through this whole strategy. Dusty has the whole protocol here.
Yeah, we're going to get into your gear a little bit. And I want to start out, do you carry a backpack to the woods, Bob?
Absolutely.
Any particular brand?
Yeah, I think it's called, I can't even say the word right, Tenzing, I believe is what it is. A Tenzing.
Yep.
Yeah, I think that's what it's called.
Gotcha.
Yep. I carry a backpack. I'm a firm believer. I don't care about the weight as much as I do as having what I need. As the old adage goes, I'd rather need it and have it than need it and not have it. So, and I carry in my backpack, I carry a rattle bag. I carry a grunt call. I very much love some basic, not really scents. I use a spray cover scent, but I do like some of the calming stick style scents. Trying to remember the manufacturer's name. Excuse me, I lost it. But it's a calming deer scent. I do use that quite frequently. But yes, I carry a backpack all the time. And also, and that's with me right from bow season right up through rifle season. And I really don't change a lot. I always have my little card reader in there because if I can check a card, if I can get into the stand early enough and check if I have a camera there, it kind of gives me a little bit of a heads up of what's kind of going on. And I can kind of manage like, okay, I have used 5, 6, 7 cameras in a half-mile area to chase one deer down to get ahead of him during daylight shooting times where I can get at them. You start seeing these deer this buck, a mature buck I'm hunting, that he's coming in at, let's say it's before time change. He's coming in at 8:00. Well, he's coming from this direction. I'll set up another camera on his path that he's using, because, I've got a whole nother theory on paths. Use it on the same path and keep going back until I can get ahead of him on property that I can hunt, where I can get within him in shooting time. Then that's where I'll set up to hunt him on a climber basis or ground with a bow or crossbow. But
very good. Sounds like your pack's full and good strategy on your trail cameras. What kind of camouflage are you wearing?
I don't spend a lot of money on camouflage, and not that it's not needed. I wear heavily a 3D bug suit, a very light mesh bug suit that I normally get from either Bass Pro or Cabela's, one that's very breathable, and I wear that religiously from the day one of bow season right up until it's just too cold, and I'll use it a lot of times as an outer garment if I'm hunting in a ladder stand and I'm somewhat exposed out where I can be seen. I'll even use it as a cover up. But that's kind of my go-to hunting thing. I'm real strong on face paint. I don't do well with masks. I don't like hunting with them on, so I do a lot of face paint. Again, if I'm hunting up close, if I'm hunting a field or something like that where I'm shooting more than 100 yards, I don't get so concerned with the face paint aspect of things. But that's what I always have. I got 2 pairs of lacrosse rubber boots. That's an absolute given. I always wear them, and I always have whatever I'm wearing tucked in them. I never have them, the clothes laying out the side of them. I always have it tucked in, and I always put some of my calming scent on the side of my soles or something, just whenever I'm walking. And that's something. But 2 pairs of lacrosse, one for the super cold weather and one from first day of bow season up until regular weather. Now with my foot being the way it is, I don't feel my right foot, so I know if my left foot's cold, my right foot's got to be. So I try to monitor my feet temperatures from that point with what boots I wear.
Gotcha. We got into your backpack a little bit when we talked about your camouflage. What kind of bow are you shooting, Bob?
I was real strong when I was shooting a traditional bow. When I say traditional, non-crossbow, when I was shooting a regular compound bow, I shot Matthews. Really loved my Matthews. I had an MQ-32, and I had very good luck with it. Well, when they allowed crossbows to be used down here during archery season, I kind of got a little bit of interest in it. And so I went out and purchased a 10-point, and I'll tell you, I love crossbow hunting. And there's a lot of guys say, that's cheating and stuff like that. Well, it is and it isn't. And when you take a standard compound bow and you're relying there's a lot of human error that can be in play. And if I can prevent human error, are you judging the sight right? Is your pin perfectly where it needs to be? Crossbow, it's kind of a no-brainer. With the way crossbows are built today and the speeds you're getting out of them, 40 yards and under with one pin, if you've got a good placement shot, the animal is going to die. It's going to suffer less, the whole 9 yards. I hear less woundings and trackings for long periods of time with crossbows than I do with standard archery. Now, I'm not knocking the guys. This is just my preference. I just like to know when I pull my trigger on my 10-point that what I'm pulling the trigger on is gonna have a much simpler death, I should say. So,
gotcha. Any particular brand?
Yeah, I had the 10-point Turbo XLT. I just picked up the new Carbon, the reverse limb one. That by 10-point Carbon. I can't even remember the rest of it now.
Gotcha. Are you shooting aluminum, carbon fiber? What kind of arrows you running?
Well, with the 10-point, with the new style 10-points, they're strong on using their Omni Nox style nocks. And so I've always been the weighted forward beaming arrows, and it was a struggle for me to get away from them with my old 10-point. But with the new 10-point, with the reverse limb, and all new 10-points, they're very strong on the new Omni Nox, which is pretty exclusive to their carbon arrow. So I do shoot all carbons. The broadheads that I've really had great luck with has been the rage, the standard old expandable 2-blade rage. There's guys, there's a bunch of different ones, but it's one of those things where I've never had a rage ever fail me. It's never not done what it was supposed to do, and I'm not going to go away from it. So,
any particular rage?
It's not the new hypodermic, just the standard original cross bolt expandable tip broadhead, the gold style one. I've tried the hypodermics. I've shot the hypodermics. I've shot one doe with the hypodermic. Had good results with it. But the only thing on that one is that the tip was a little pointier than I liked, so I didn't feel that it was going to have the bone crushing capability as the little larger, heavier tip. So I've kind of stuck with the old school one. I will say, with shooting a reverse limb style crossbow, it adds a whole new meaning to crossbow hunting with the balance. That is something that a lot of people that I know say, I try to carry a crossbow and it's just too heavy in the front and I wobble a lot. Those reverse limbs, man, where the center of the weight is so much closer to the center of the crossbow, it's a whole nother world when it comes to shooting. So that's by far my favorite crossbow I have ever shot. In 10-point, you want to talk about product. The reason I go with 10-point, I was sold when I dropped mine out of a stand when I was in a tripod one day, and I spun around and accidentally hit it and knocked it out, and took it the next day. I kept hunting the rest of the night, went the next day and shot it, and the thing was still perfectly on. No damage, no nothing. So that sold me on 10-point right there.
No kidding.
Yes, sir.
How far a drop was it?
16 feet, and I swear it hit every rung of that tripod on the way down. I mean, it bounced. It sounded like somebody hitting a doorbell. Bing, 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 all the way down.
No kidding. So it held up pretty good then.
Oh, God. As a matter of fact, it's still in service today. I passed it down to a friend of mine.
Wow.
Yep. With original string and everything.
That's crazy.
Yep.
That is crazy for sure. What's your preference as far as tree stands? Are you a hang on, a climber, a ladder stand, or a ground blind? Tell us about what you like to use in North Carolina.
Yeah, we have a lot of double buddy ladder stands in place in woods, and that's my standard tree stand. That is the stand where I want to go hunting. Now, if I start to hunt a deer, I'm very strong with climber. I love a climber. If there's a specific deer that I want to hunt that's not giving me the ability in any of my other locations and not coming in the time frames I need, I do go primarily to a climber. And not so much that I don't like the idea of ground blinds, and I do like a ground blind. Again, our law here in our counties, we must be 8 feet off the ground to shoot a high-powered firearm. So if it's during rifle season, that throws the ground blind out of the game. But if it's something that I can hunt from the ground during muzzleloader season or use a shotgun slug gun, which I don't have, I either use muzzleloader or rifle, then that can change it. But the ground blind aspect of things, and this is a discussion I've had with multiple things, I'm a firm believer. This is how I look at a deer. Okay. If we have a buck and we're hunting this big buck and we start to pattern him in this area and we start to realize his area that he's showing up, he's getting out of bed, 30 minutes before light goes down. I've always had this fear factor of putting up a ground blind because I look at deer like you or me. If you came home and found your bedroom rearranged, or if you found someone else's underwear laying on the floor, you're going to notice it and you're going to wonder what's going on. And deer's number one priority in life. What is it? What do most people think it is? Mine is to survive. What do they got to do? They got to survive. Okay. They're only breeding for a very short time once a year. So the rest of the year, all they can do is survive. So what are you going to do to survive? You're going to learn your surroundings. You're going to understand that, hey, this path here leads to safety. This path here leads me back home. Well, if I don't like what's on this path or I don't like something about this path, I know this other path will lead me back to my bedroom. So when I take and put up this 6x6 by 6 foot tall ground blind and try to brush it in the best I can, and I'm expecting to be 50 yards away, you know as well as I do, at least I think, that deer is going to know something's going on. So now what have you done? Maybe he just doesn't notice it. Maybe he does. It's just a chance that I've never taken. It's just one of those things. I'd rather get up in a tree where I know my odds are better of him not recognizing I'm there. It's less disturbance to his area, less disturbance to his home range, and that's why I climb. So I'm a firm believer in climbers, or my old trustworthy, if I get out of work late or something and I want to spend the last hour and a half hunting, I'll go to a ladder stand or go to a box stand. If it's not bow season. If it's bow season, I've got a bunch of lock-ons. I love Millennium lock-ons. If you've never sat in one, you got to sit in one. And the only downfall about them is they're a little too comfortable because if you get all tired, you might as well call it a night because you're going to sleep. So
that makes sense.
But climbers, Summit all the way. Summit all the way. And again, for two reasons, not just on comfort, safety. That is one of the, I've had many a climbers. I've had APIs, I've had Summits, I've had multiple. I've had the store brand style stuff. When I take a Summit, and whether it be a hard barked oak tree, when I lock those teeth in, there's no question it's not going to slip. There's too many other ones that I've had where I lock the teeth in, go to make that next move with the top, and feel your bottom just kind of shake a little and feel like it's ready to fall. That's a feeling I don't like. So Summit, when you stick those teeth in, they're sticking.
Gotcha.
Well, that makes sense. Tell us about cover sprays or cover scents that you particularly pick up to use.
When it comes to cover scents, I'm a guy that loves the fall earth scents, anything earthy. I had an instance the other night. I've had these 3D camo clothing. I got out of work. I told the guys I was leaving. I have this real nice buck on camera that I've been watching, and this is a whole nother story. But this is where I fall in love with a good spray on cover scent. Is I had my 3D camo clothing on. I put it over. I changed. It was fairly warm, so I had shorts on underneath it. That's a nice thing about those. Shorts on underneath it, rubber boots, and that camo clothing. Well, I was in our ladder stand where this buck had been showing up, and the weather was working to my favor, but the wind was not. And the wind, I thought the wind was a pretty solid direction, but if you don't know, we've had a hurricane come through here not much more than a week ago, and I don't think the weather patterns really quite come in. But while using the cover scent, I'd put it on over these clothes I haven't washed for multiple days. Well, this buck I'd been hunting came to me with me being, he was basically downwind of me. I mean, he was right in it. He was 40 yards with me with my muzzleloader, and never winded me. Went right to where I wanted, had the crosshairs right on him. Absolutely perfect shot. He was going to die. Pulled the trigger and pop. All I heard was a pop. Brand new 209 muzzleloader cap. That's all it was. One bad. To figure you buy 100 of them in a pack, and I got the one bad one out of all of them. I sat there and I was like, you got to be joking me. He walked off about 20 yards. It was such a quiet pop. He walked off about 20 yards and stopped again. I was able to reach behind me in my bag, grab the next cap, and with me fumbling and fiddling around, I dropped the cap. I was done. So the cap was 12 feet down on the ground. I'm sitting in a ladder stand watching a buck stand there, and if it wasn't for my cover spray, that would have been it. And you're asking me the name of it.
I'm assuming it's the 99.9.
Yes, that's it. Yes, that is.
Is it Hunter Specialties?
Hunter Specialties.
Okay.
It's exactly what it is. Thank you.
Got it.
Hunter Specialties. But had great luck with it. Always used it. Sorry, I'm just bad with names today. Oh,
you can't expect you to remember everything that your arsenal is wrapped up around. Man, some great technique, some great gear, and
I definitely want to get in a hunt. Just one last question, Bob, before we get there. Now that with all your arsenal, how do you narrow in on a buck that you're hunting? You said you use some cameras. How do you decide where to hunt, when to hunt?
That's a great question, because that I think is kind of what the most important thing about what we're trying to do besides managing the deer. Again, I think we all want to try to kill that trophy buck, and I've been very blessed to have quite a few on the wall. I killed 2 nice ones last year that have been mounted. Well, I start, with here in North Carolina, we are allowed to feed deer, and some people frown against that. Most people here in the state don't frown against that. But when you hear feeding deer, you think of it as like, oh, you throw this food pile out and the deer are going to come. You're just going to shoot one. It's not really like that. And what I like to do is I like to start scouting usually start scouting right around in the June-ish area. I kind of like to let the deer, because you think about it, they're really done. We're done hunting them January 1st. So you got to give them a few months to get back to reality. You got to let the does start dropping the little ones. And you got to let the pressure off them a little. So we try to start hitting the supplements, and we reuse all of our areas for the same supplemental area. And we do ground supplements, whether it be minerals in the ground or a mineral rock of some sort. And we start doing that fairly early. Well, the cameras start to go up. And the cameras start to go up in most of our common areas that we've managed or have had pretty good deer population, and want to see what's going on and see what survived the year, because even though they're on our property, it doesn't mean they're not going to be killed by somebody else on another property. And so I start to monitor and watching these deer grow and watching their antler growth. And velvet sometimes can throw you off. You'll see a deer in velvet and be like, oh my gosh, that thing's going to be a monster. Loses his velvet. You're like, whoa, what happened?
Right.
But so that starts. Well, then I'll start putting some corn out once the farmers start harvesting some corn. And I like to lay my corn in a long, very narrow stretch, very thin, because deer to me are natural grazers. They don't like to come eat out of this pile. So I'll make a 70, 75 yard long swath of corn on just one long straight line. If they're crossing in an area and they just so happen to go by it, there's a potential they'll stop and they'll really, hey, look, there's food. And I'm not necessarily doing this for the big buck, because what I find is with the big bucks, they don't just come in and start eating. They may grab a bite or two and leave. I want that there for the comfort factor. I want the does in there. I want the little ones in there. I want it for a comfort factor. I want the young bucks to get in there, and I want them to be bred in that this is a comfortable area. This is an area for comfort. There's plenty of deer here, not a lot to be feared of. Kind of take that fear factor out of that buck. And when I put this corn stretch out, I'll put multiple cameras in an area. And I'll try to shoot them, if it's in a lane, I'll try to shoot the cameras down the lane to cover the most distance. Because what you'll find these big bucks will stand on the edge of the wood in the lane, or they'll stand outside of the corn. They don't want to be part of that feeding aspect in the daylight. So that'll give me an idea, okay, there we go. We're starting to see some nice quality deer on them. If that doesn't work and I've all of a sudden got this laid out and I don't see them, now I go after them. Now I start looking in the woods. Earlier in the season where our heat's still warm, I start looking water sources. What are the water sources I look for? Whether it be irrigation ponds, whether it be small creeks. And it's not necessarily just a spot. Where on the small creek are they crossing? Where does it look like there's a lot of tracks in the low water where they're coming down to drink? I'll start working water sources, because the food source is so strong here in the summers with the agricultural crops that food's not a big problem. The water can become the problem because we don't have a lot of mountain streams. We got these little runoff creeks here and there. So I'll start working water sources more than I do the food sources. That's usually where I'll start finding some of the big bucks, is start working in the water. Then you'll lose them. Then they won't be there anymore. As things progress into the summer, then we'll start chasing them a little more. And that's kind of how I pinpoint to where and what I'm going to hunt. Okay, and if all that fails, then I start just laying heavily on the agricultural fields. Okay, he's going to come out and eat these soybeans. He's going to one time. So I can take a 20-acre field and have 6 cameras wrapped around it just to try to catch a picture. That's when I try to find that buck. And then I'll work that buck back to its bedding area if I can find it, and if that bedding area is on my property, and that's how I'll hunt that deer. And try to get them before the rut comes in. But a lot of times, you almost got to wait for the rut because they're traveling so big areas.
Gotcha. All right. Fascinating. All right. So before we got on the air, I asked you to think about your most memorable deer hunt. And I think you've been thinking about it actually, we talked about it earlier today. So you've had enough time to think about it. And I wanted to know if you have a place where we're going to go. And if so, where are we going?
I do. And I think my most memorable deer hunt is probably one deer hunt where I didn't harvest a deer. Not that it hasn't happened many times, but this story is almost too good to be not told.
Okay.
I've been very blessed, and I've harvested a lot of nice deer, and I've hunted them well. But this story happened just after my accident. Okay. Is being an avid hunter and don't have a lot of patience of just laying on the couch, and my wife being an RN. I was constantly nagging her of wanting to go back hunting. Here I am laying on the couch. I've got a wound vac still hooked to my leg, and I can't do anything for weeks. I can't do anything.
Right.
And my wife, being a nurse, what the doctor says is gospel. There's no other question about it. So I had convinced my wife that as soon as my wound vac comes off, if I could go hunting, she would allow me to go hunting if I did not climb anything, and only her dad could take me. And I was like, man, this is it. This is what I need. So this is about mid-November. My wound vac, the doctor finally gets my wound vac off, so now I'm mobile. But I'm mobile with crutches. I'm still on this giant half-body cast. I'm stoked. I'm like, yeah, I'm going hunting. So I talked to her dad, who's a good friend of mine. I said, Papa, I said, you got to take me deer hunting. She's like, she's going to let you go? I was like, yep, she's going to let me go. Wow. It was nobody could believe it. So I said, okay. And the threats were all there. You better not get hurt. Nothing. You're not climbing nothing. None of, I heard it all. So,
right.
So I was stoked. I mean, that day couldn't come any quicker. So I crutch myself out to my man cave. I get everything ready, get my hunting gear ready. And I had decided that summer, I've been a very avid 308 caliber deer hunter. I love a 308 caliber, but for some reason, I thought I needed this 300 Win Mag. That's what I needed. So I get the 300 Win Mag, I get my big old hunting suit on, and my father-in-law takes me to this one spot. And this one spot is this old single-wide trailer in the middle of a field. And he says, okay, you go sit in the trailer. Okay, well, I'm just over the county line, which is the next county. The next county you can hunt from the ground. So I'm like, oh, this is great. I'm going to go sit in this old rundown trailer. Nobody lives in it. So I go in this old 1970s living room, plush carpet. Nobody lives in this 20 years. Got a fireplace, and I slide the window open, and I'm sitting there in this chair. I got my leg propped up on this old, I don't even know what, nightstand thingy in the corner. I got the window propped up. Well, the field we're going in, we'd been having this really, really big 9-pointer come out. And a buddy of mine shot at him during bow season with a crossbow and missed. So we knew this deer had been coming out, and I was only about 125 yards from where that deer was coming out. So I said, this is going to be a perfect opportunity. So I'm sitting there in my chair. I'm all comfy. I'm wrapped up in this giant bundled suit. I got some winter hats on my foot, what's exposed to keep it warm. I'm looking through my binoculars, and here he comes. Well, now he's not 125 yards. He's about 350 yards. I take my rangefinder, and I range him. He's now 320. He's coming my way. Well, the light, the time frame, the way he's walking and the way the sun's dropping ain't going to work. So I'm sitting there going, I'm going to have to take a shot at him. So I range find him again. He's now 280. He's stopped dead. He's in the field eating. So I range find him. I got my scope on him. I got on full power. I know the gun's capable of doing it. I've shot the distances with it before. So I'm half propped up on the windowsill, got my gun resting on, got my leg resting on the windowsill. How in God's green earth I'm going to shoot, I have no idea. I got the scope perfectly on him. I pulled the trigger, and I thought somebody behind me hit me with a hammer. I see stars I'm like, oh my gosh, what happened? All of a sudden I feel this cold sensation go down my nose, go down my lips. And I look down and all of a sudden I just see blood running off of my nose and my chin. It's pouring off me. I'm like, oh my God. The scope, I'm in the worst position. I'm shooting this cannon. Well, the scope pops me clear in the eye, splits me wide open. So my father-in-law, he's hunting the next field over, and he texts me, goes, "Did you get one?" My response back says, "I got blood, not the deer, mine." And so my father-in-law, he ends up, gets dark, he comes back, and I crutch myself, and I'm sitting there. There's no front door in this place. It's gone. So I'm standing there in what would be the doorway with my gun slung over my shoulder, my coveralls covered in blood, my face covered in blood. He starts laughing at me. He's like, "She is going to kill you." I said, "Nah." Now, this is my first hunting episode since I released. So I said, "There's no way. She's not going to. She'll be all right." So he's laughing. He's driving me home, of course, because I can't drive. So he's driving me home, so he drives me home. We get off just my backpack and put my gun away in my backpack. And I can't get my coveralls off. So I crutch myself to the front door, and I see the outside light come on. The first door opens, and my screen door stand there. My wife looks out at me, and here's this big old bright, outdoor light shining down on this gleaming, bright red, bloody face. And she's looking out the window, and her jaw hits the floor, and steam just about comes out of her ears. She slams the door on me and turns the light off. Of course, my father-in-law is behind me the whole time laughing, thinks it's the funniest thing in the world.
Right.
And he says, "All right, man, I'm going to go home now. I'll talk to you later." He says, "You're not coming in the house?" He goes, "Are you crazy? I ain't going in there." I said, "Thanks." I come in that house, boy, I'll tell you what, I didn't think I was ever going to be able to go deer hunting again. I heard it that night, boy. "I told you if you got hurt and you'll never hunt again." Of course, the very first time I go hunting, right, I split my face wide open. So that is probably my most memorable story.
That is one for the memory books for sure. It's like you go out hunting and it's like you went to a wrestling match and you were in the main event. You come home bloodied all up. That's crazy, man. Absolutely crazy. Great story though. Great story. All right, I've got 10 rapid fire questions for you, Bob. And this is a kind of I get to know you a little bit better type segment. So if you're ready, I'm ready when you are.
Ready.
All right. What's your number one hunting tip of all time?
Oh, remember that a deer's number one priority is to survive.
Gotcha. Very nice. What's that one thing that drives you crazy if you leave it in the truck or at home that you got to have with you at all times in order to feel like you're going to be successful? What's that one thing for you?
Rangefinder.
Gotcha. That's a good answer. We get that one a lot. What's your biggest pet peeve? Not necessarily in hunting, but in life.
Oh, littering.
Littering. All right. Excellent. And how old are you today, Bob?
45.
45. All right. Knowing what you know today about life and all your life experiences, what would you tell the 20-year-old Bob Dumong?
Would he have to listen? Because he wouldn't listen.
He wouldn't listen back then?
No. Honestly, I would probably say get close to God.
Okay.
He'll lead you in the right path.
Gotcha. All right. Very good. You are at a hunting convention somewhere in the United States, and a stranger comes up to you and asks you what you do for a living. What do you tell them?
Fix boats.
Fix boats.
Make people happy.
Very nice. What did you have for breakfast this morning?
Oh, man. 8-pack of Little Debbie donuts. On a Little Debbie diet.
All right. Very good. All right. You get your... What's that, Dusty?
Beautiful diet.
Beautiful diet. You get your own blank billboard on a highway. It's white canvas. Put anything you want on it. What would it say?
Oh, man. What would it say? Live today like it's going to be your last.
Okay. Very nice. If I say the word successful to you, who's the first person that pops into your head and why?
Oh, boy. I would have to say my dad. Mm-hmm. I think because he may have not been successful financially, but he was successful at everything he wanted to do. He became the best he could be and best there was.
Gotcha. Excellent. All right. What's a typical day in the life of Bob Dumong look like?
Oh, interesting. Typical weekday is get up in the morning, enjoy my coffee, watch a little bit of the news, catch up on some of the basic gossip, drop the kids off at school, and off to work I go. Make sure we have plenty of work and plenty of things to do for the day, and come on home when the day gets done. It's usually 11, 12-hour day during the busy time. Come home, spend some time with the family, and that's a work day. Weekends, we try to go down to the beach at our place and spend the weekends down there. And my wife is an avid fisherwoman. She loves to fish. So if we put the boat down from the lift and we're fishing every day, we're down there.
Gotcha. All right. That's cool. There's nothing wrong with fishing. That's for sure. Okay. And to wrap it up, what's a typical deer hunting day in the life of Bob Dumong look like?
I kind of got 2 days.
Okay.
I got the day or multiple days when I've found a deer that I want to harvest, and now it's me against him. That day is very regimented. It's getting up early. It's making sure everything's ready to go. The wind's right. My stand placement's going to or is not already right. Making sure that it is. Then I have the deer hunting days where I think it's more or less wanting to go sit in the woods and climb up in a ladder stand and just gather my mind and think about the day and just my little bit of me time, hoping a nice deer will come out. So there's a little bit of two. I have the enjoying deer hunting time than the real deer hunting time.
Gotcha. All right. Very good, man. Well, that's the 10 rapid fire questions, and you passed. It's great listening to your answers, Bob. Thanks for doing that. And, this we've exhausted over an hour and 40 minutes, and it seems like we've been talking for 20 minutes. And it's been a pleasure, Bob, having you on the show. I've been wanting to do this for a long time, and I swear that the show really got started in a lot of ways because of our friendship and our relationship, and that we hunted hard when you were in New Hampshire, and continue to hunt together in different parts of the country, whether it be North Carolina or recently in Maryland. And I expect to do that until we can't walk. So let's keep doing that.
Absolutely, man. I will deer hunt till the day I go to the grave. That is no doubt.
It's always good talking to an old friend. And I kind of feel the same way when I talk to you, Dusty, every week. It's just good to talk to old buddies. And I think there are probably 2 people on the planet that I talk to probably as much as I talk to my wife. That's you and Bob. So, and he's such a good guy. I'm glad we met way back when I pulled up to his house with a canoe on my old S10 pickup truck, and he said, let's go deer hunting. So we did. We've been hunting ever since. And you know what, Dusty, it was interesting. I was going through our entire back catalog of Facebook mail that we've had over the years because I was trying to archive all of our older emails so that we could be more effective with the emails that are not technically emails, but mail that was coming in through our Facebook system. And lo and behold, as I archived these things back to, I think the last one was, the one in particular I'm talking about was like early January 2014.
Right. And
it was the conversation that you and I had when we were first introduced on Facebook. And it has the entire conversation that we had going back to even January 2013 when you first sent in your Chubby Tines buck that led to this whole thing we got going on now.
Right.
It was kind of funny. I got to look back at how it all unraveled. So you'll have to go. I know you haven't seen it yet, but you'll have to go and check it out. It's actually quite entertaining.
Yeah, for sure. No doubt about it.
So it looks like we're going to be at SHOT Show this year.
SHOT Show, here we come.
SHOT Show, here we come. We completed the registrations for SHOT Show through the folks that run the exposition out there, and looks like we're on our way to Vegas, which is scary, but we're going to have a very productive time as well.
As long as we don't have a chipped tooth and a tiger in the bathroom when we wake up, we'll be just fine.
I wonder, who's getting the tattoo? I wonder. I don't know.
I'm in. I'll get the tattoo.
You're gonna get. You have plenty already, so it'll go just fine with your attire. I'm looking forward to that. So if you're going to SHOT Show, let us know. But Dusty, I was wondering if you might have a Chubby Tines tip of the week.
Yeah, Jay, I sure do. And it's
The Chubby Tines tip of the week is sponsored by Morse's Sporting Goods. Firearms, used firearms, bows, used bows, located at 85 Kentucky Falls Road in Hillsborough, New Hampshire. Give Jim a call at 603-464-3444, morsessportinggoods.com. Your dollars go further in New Hampshire. There's no sales tax. Morse's Sporting Goods.
It's going to be something that I see pretty regularly, and I'm going to pass this information along. There's all kinds of hunting groups and archery groups out there. If you're somebody that's hunting without a safety harness, and if you're low on funds and it ain't none of my business, or if you're having trouble getting your hands on a safety harness, please join them groups on Facebook, Archery Talk or something like that, of that nature, some kind of hunting forum group on Facebook, and post on there that you're looking for a safety harness. If anybody has an extra one, would you please send it out to me? And I will guarantee you there's another hunter out there that is willing to help you out with a safety harness to possibly save your life. Mm-hmm. That's something that, I know that a few people has posted, and several, I say 50 or 60 people said, yeah, just email or inbox me an address and I'll ship it out to you. No questions asked, no hassle, no headache. If you're in need of a safety harness, there's ways to get your hands on one. And like I said, if you're low on funds or you're having tough times in your life, everybody goes through it. And don't be scared to ask another hunter to help you out, because I know that somebody will be out there to help you.
And a safety harness, speaking of that, is that pretty much every tree stand you buy these days comes with a spare.
Right.
And they're not the most fancy units in the world, but they'll save your life. And I've got 3 of them in the garage right now. So if anybody is listening, if you need an extra harness because you didn't get one with your tree stand, or the tree stands you have just weren't supplied at that time because it wasn't an industry practice, let me know and I'll ship you out whatever I've got. I've got a bunch of them hanging out in my garage right now.
Yeah, and I'll make that offer too. I know I've got at least 2 out there, and I can only wear one myself, and I'd be happy to ship one out too for somebody that needed one. And safe hunting is something that Jay and myself promote, and we try to respect the height of tree stands. And even if you're in a ladder stand, or in particular hang on or climber, you need a harness. That's just the way it is. Don't have your family go through the recoil of you falling out of a tree stand trying to do something you love.
Right. And let's just recap what Bob mentioned from his learning experience falling out of the tree. Is that, number 1, always tell your family members or other people where you will be hunting. You don't have to give up your spot, but for safety reasons, at least let them know the exact spot where you're going to be. A lot of those phones these days have tracking devices where they can actually find where you're at. So at least tell somebody where you're going to be, and better yet, if you have some kind of a system where you can actually find and locate yourself so that somebody else can locate you too, that's even better. Secondly, always check your safety equipment. Number 3, always wear a safety harness, and just be prepared and know how to use your safety harness. It's one thing to put it on, but you should actually test that safety harness in your yard, hanging a foot off the ground, to feel what it's like and try to get out of it, so that you can safely and effectively get out of the hanging. Because one of the things that happens sometimes is once you fall, if you're hanging too long, then your legs go numb and you lose feeling, and then you pass out, and then eventually circulation is cut off, and who knows what's going to happen after that. So you only have so much time to get out of that position. But if you've never tried it, it's weird. It doesn't feel that good. It's uncomfortable, and it's extremely hard to move around. And if you're not ready for that, then you're going to have a really hard time saving yourself. And I don't know if you've practiced that, Dusty. I've tried it a few times. It's not easy to maneuver around and flip yourself over and get yourself in a position where you can actually get out of that position.
Right. It's really not.
Yep. So something to think about. Anyway, great tip. Thank you to Bob Dumong for joining us on the Big Buck Registry Deer Hunting Podcast. Thanks to ScentLock Enforcer for sponsoring the show. Thanks to the Eurohanger for sponsoring the show. And thanks to Morse's Sporting Goods for sponsoring the Chubby Tines Tip of the Week. Dusty, where can we find you when we're not here in the studios at Big Buck Registry?
Facebook.com/Chubby Tines Outdoors. Shoot me an email, Dusty@Big Buck Registry, or hit me up on Instagram @Chasing Antler. Jay, where can the people read it out to you when you're not on the mic?
Likewise, shoot me an email, jay@bigbuckregistry.com. You can always check us out on Facebook, facebook.com/bigbuckregistry, twitter.com/bigbuckregistry, instagram.com/bigbuckregistry, youtube.com/bigbuckregistry. Check us out on iTunes, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, Blueberry, and of course you can listen to all of our shows on YouTube now because they're being converted from audio to video. So you can actually watch the audio video on YouTube, and now it's being posted to Facebook. So it's always there. So basically, anywhere podcasting is hanging out, you can find us. And if you wanted to find any of the places we're hanging out, literally, all you have to do is go on your iPhone, go on your phone, go on the internet, and just type in Big Buck Registry, and you'll find pages and pages and pages of all the places we're at, all our social media places, all the places you can listen to the podcast. And every Saturday morning, like clockwork, 5 o'clock in the morning, we launch the next show. So if you wanted to listen to the most recent show and you don't have an audio device, but you do have a computer, you can always, at 5 a.m., start to listen to the latest show on our Facebook page, because that's where it will be launched. Also on Twitter, it'll be launched, and also on YouTube. So you can always get them over there if you need them. So I think that's all the places we're at, Dusty. And certainly if you would like to share your buck, and there are a lot of them falling in the woods right now, and we get a lot of pictures being sent in, which is why I was cleaning up our Facebook mail. All you have to do is go to bigbuckregistry.com/mybuck, and there are multiple ways to submit your deer. Email's the best. Second best is Facebook mail. Third best is to upload it through our blog post system. Multiple ways to do it. Definitely, if you shoot a big deer, get it over to us. We'll review it just as long as it's a picture of you and the buck. Just need the first name of the hunter and the state of the kill, and we're good to go. That's it. So that's a wrap, Dusty. Can't wait to do it again next week. I'm Jay Scott.
I'm Dusty Phillips.
This is the Big Buck Registry's Deer Hunting Podcast. We'll see you next week.
Can't wait.